Well, I'm really excited today because I have Kiana Underwood as my guest. Welcome, Kiana, to the Flower Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott.
It's I'm a big fan. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be
You, thank you. Where are you located?
I'm in New York, upstate, about an
Upstate.
hour and a half from the city.
Okay, so it's not too far from the city.
On a good day without traffic, yes. Not too bad. Yes. Right now it's great because no one's going into the city.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and there's never traffic there, right?
Never. No. Traffic, what's that? New York City. No.
So I always love to start our interviews by kind of hearing your story, kind of your flower journey, if you will. And so I'm just kind of curious, how did you begin? How did you enter into our floral community?
Yeah. Let's see. I went to school to obtain my degree in international economics. And so once I graduated from this wonderful school of advanced international studies with my master's degree, I wanted to be a diplomat. And so it was my dream to be able to connect with people from all over the world. I myself was born in Iran, so to be able to connect with international people was always a dream. And I can speak some different languages, and so it was just a natural thing for me to want to do, to be able to travel the world and work in different parts of the world. So, but in 2001, when I graduated, I was in DC at School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins. And so I moved from there to San Francisco, where I had been raised since I was a teenager. And, in San Francisco, there really are no jobs for people who want to be diplomats. It was a big career mistake for me to do that. Nevertheless, I obtained a job at a think tank at Stanford University. And my dream was to write about women's rights and human rights. And I had very much a liberal mindset. And this think tank was a Republican think tank. So it wasn't a play, and it was all men, with the exception of Condoleezza Rice, who was a scholar there. And I just found myself completely and utterly uninterested in what I was doing. The research and writing that I was doing was not what I was interested in. And in general, just it wasn't for me. It wasn't what I had passion for. So once I got pregnant, within a matter of 2 years, I got pregnant with my first child. And I decided that this was my way to get out of working, and that I would be a full-time mom. And so I had my daughter. It was great to be able to, it was a great privilege to be able to stay at home and take care of her. And then in a matter of 5 years, I had 3 kids under the age of 5 that I was at home with. And, while those were some amazing years of my life, and I was privileged to be able to stay at home with my children and raise my kids, I always felt like I needed something more for me.
Sure.
I needed a getaway, some kind of, I don't know, something that I could just call mine. So in the meantime, I have to tell you that I was born and raised in the city of Tehran, in Iran, and flowers in Persian culture are a big thing. They are, our New Year is the first day of spring. And so everything revolves around flowers, whether it's a wedding, whether it's New Year, whether it's just a guest coming to your home. Flowers are everything. And in some ways I took that for granted because it was always a part of my life. And I never thought anything of it. Just like you eat food, you have flowers. And we had beautiful gardens in Iran. My grandfather had lovely gardens that I just would hang around with him every afternoon. And then my mother always kept a nice garden. Long story short, when I became a stay-at-home mom or just a housewife, it was very much a part of my culture to have flowers on my table, in my house, in my entry. Whenever I had a guest, there would be a beautiful centerpiece on the dinner table. So, and as I was becoming more involved in my motherhood, I would have people come over and I would have flowers on the table, and people would always say, where are these flowers from? And I'd say, I made these arrangements. And they would say, well, can you make one for me? Or can you show me how to do it? And so it was then that my husband said, this is your thing. It seems like you're good at it. And when my youngest turned 5 and went to kindergarten, I decided that maybe I could pursue something in the world of flowers. Of course, when Nate said you should have a business around floral design, I thought that was a ridiculous notion. That why would anyone want me to make, flower arrangements for them? But I had nothing to lose. And with his support, we started a website. We started like a Facebook account with, the name Tulipina on it. And I decided that I was just going to really immerse myself in this beautiful world that of flowers that I actually didn't know much about, even though it was a part of my life as long as I could remember it. For starters, I didn't know the names of flowers in English,
Okay, yeah.
because it was not something that, maybe carnations or tulips, but not all the flowers that I was seeing. And at the time I was living in San Francisco. So I thought, I'm just going to go to the San Francisco Flower Mart. I'm going to explore. I'm going to see what's there. And honestly, it's the best place for any flower person to start, to continue, to flourish, whatever you want to call it. For me, it was just a gift to have the San Francisco Flower Mart 20 minutes from my house.
Wow.
And so I would go every week, early in the morning, before my kids woke up to go to school. I would be there. I would be exploring. I would just be checking out everything that's there, learning the names, what flowers I was drawn to. And so once I would bring the flowers back and I would make some arrangements and I would put them on Instagram. And at the time, Instagram was very much not very popular, at least at the time. And so people were just beginning to use Instagram. So, and I thought I would just put my arrangements out there. That was how I was going to get seen, I suppose. And within a few months, I was seeing some interest from people, and I was getting better at arranging, and I was doing little parties for preschool moms, and just really loving this new world that I had thrown myself at.
Wow. That's got to be, I don't know. I was supposed to have visited that market for the first time this past spring, and of course the trip got canceled. And I know I've had friends that have been there and worked there over the years, and the pictures I've seen and the things I've bought from those markets, I think it's just an incredible place.
Yes, it really is.
Talk about the Willy Wonka candy store.
Yes.
It really is. It's like, sometimes I feel like, does that make it easier for the designer, but harder from establishing yourself because it's so, there's so many other people doing it? Or was your look that different?
Sure. Yeah, so absolutely. I have to say that it's San Francisco is filled with people who are artists and are creative people and have some beautiful, they do beautiful work. And it can be very intimidating for a person who's just starting. And that exactly was my hesitation when my husband said, you can do this. And I thought, well, why would anybody want me to do that? Because there are so many wonderful florists in San Francisco. But I think for me, it was that I wasn't doing it to right away start a business. I was doing it it was my getaway. And I wasn't pressured by the elements that most people are pressured by, paying my rent, you know,
Right.
making money from this craft, so that I can then live off of it. For me, it was just a hobby that I was becoming more and more passionate about. And I was just, really exploring this world that I knew nothing of. And of course, this industry. So I think it was definitely helpful for me that I had my husband's support and that I didn't have to use this craft initially to make a living off of. So once you take those two out of the equation, then the intimidation factor goes away, and you can just be yourself. You can explore with your creative self and understand who you are and what this is and how far you can take this art. And that is what I did. And because I did that and I went into it without the expectation that it was going to be this huge career for me, I think that's why it became that, because I wasn't afraid. I was just doing it to enjoy it.
Yeah, it was just coming out of that creative space in your mind. You know, it was an
Yes.
outlet in a way.
Yes.
Did you take any courses, or do you consider yourself self-taught?
I didn't take any courses. I'm definitely, yes, I'm self-taught, and whatever you see today is a result of my growth over the years that I have since 2011. And you can see that growth if you went all the way, which I don't recommend you do that because I don't want you to see it. But if you went all the way down, you will see the growth gradually on Instagram over the last, I don't know, 9 years. So it's, to me, in my opinion, the best way to learn something is by doing it. It's the experience. There's no amount of book and teacher that's going to tell you how you should do what you do, especially something that is so artistic, because it should just be intuitive and it should come, you should be free with it. And I just came to that by doing it and feeling free to do it.
Right. And I think that's really great. I feel like I love your comment about not going back all the way to Instagram, because,
Yes.
you know, so many times people don't start, or they talk themselves out of things
Yes.
because they feel like it has to be perfect, like on day one. They don't
Mm-hmm.
realize that someone like you, who has an incredible business, started at one place and it evolved and it grew.
Right. No, I don't, I have fears, don't get me wrong, but I'm able to talk myself out of them. So I will tell myself that it'll become my challenge, and I will say, I'm not going to let fear get in my way of whatever it is that I'm, setting out to do. And I think that most people do allow their fear and being intimidated of whatever it is to be their best selves.
Have you always been good at that, or is that something that you feel like you've gotten better at?
Well, I think that as you get older, you get to understand who you are better. But I
Right.
also think that so much of who I am, and I think that I have I have a strong personality in general. And I think that stems from my childhood and the life that I had to live. I think that, I lived through war in Iran as a young person. There was a war between Iran and Iraq for 8 years. And during my most formative years, I was living that life, the life that you have to leave your home to go hide somewhere because you just heard that they're going to bombard right near your home. And then from there, we were immigrants. We moved from Iran to San Francisco. And I think that most people don't understand that the life of an immigrant, as lucky as we are to be able to live in one of the best parts of the world, is not easy, because you have a whole new set of expectations, cultural acceptance that you have to become used to and learn. So I think all of those things combined with just maybe my personality made me into a person who is stronger and who is not afraid of going for something if there is a dream. So yes, I think my culture really had much to do, and where I grew up has so much to do with who I am today as a person.
No, that's incredible. Yeah, and I didn't know that you were there during that time. So
Yes,
how old were you when you came to the States?
I was 15 in 1990. We moved with my family of 4, and we had lived through the war. I mean, I was, let's see, 1979. I was 4 years old when the revolution occurred in Iran, where kingdom was toppled and replaced by Islamic clergymen today.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, I lived through that sort of, but I was a child and maybe I didn't understand exactly what was going on. But I lived through some of my most formative years in this regime where they were dominating women, they are oppressing women, they are, and as a teenager, as a girl, it was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course living
imagine.
through the war.
I mean, it's just so tough.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause things for just 1 second.
Okay.
Do you hear an echo at all?
I don't. Do you?
Okay, I do. And it's me. I hear me.
Okay.
So that's why. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't. My thing, thank God. It was that way like the last time I had my podcast, and it was so annoying.
Yeah. Which we're recording 2 different sets of audio, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
So it can happen, but I just want to make sure that you're not hearing it, because if you're not hearing it, then it's probably perfectly fine. So.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, so one of the questions that just really intrigues me, that I've been dying to ask, is, when I see your work, to me, everything is like this, like what's behind you right now in this image.
Yes.
It's like works of art. I mean, they're
Thank
just,
you.
it's just so, it reminds me of Dutch Masters, it reminds me, just of that kind of fullness and variety of botanicals. And so I just think if you're starting your business, is that been part of the evolution, or is that always been a passion? Okay, so how did you kind of get to that level? Because I think a lot of people starting out think, my customers won't pay that much for stuff, or, how do you kind of push through that to kind of get to that level?
Yeah, so I, in the first, you have to understand, not only was I learning floral design as I was doing this, but I was also understanding the market and this industry that I knew nothing about. Most people are working for other florists before they become popular, or they have some kind of hands-on experience with events and just the real world, which is a lot of work. Floral design is not just beautiful flowers you're surrounding yourself with. It's a lot of cleaning buckets and long hours and back pain and you name it. So
schlepping.
Absolutely. I mean, 80% of what I do is schlepping. And so I was learning all of that. And for me, I decided that, and I was doing some little events in the beginning, I started doing $5,000 weddings, for example. And I thought, this is just not enough money for me I'm not even making enough money to barely pay for the flowers I'm buying. What happens to the labor? Like, how am I getting paid for my art and for my design? And it wasn't really allowing me to create the kind of work that I wanted to associate myself with, or that I wanted my name to be associated with. So I decided that I was just not going to accept weddings that were less than, say, $10,000 for flower budget. And so that year, that meant that I wasn't going to do any weddings, maybe. And I was prepared for that because I thought, well, I'm going to wait for what is right for me. If it means I'm not going to do weddings all year, I'm going to be prepared for that. And again, it wasn't like I had any overhead. I was just working out of my garage in my home, and I had no rent, nothing to deal with. So whatever I was making, doing whatever I was doing, it was just extra or paying for itself. So that year I did maybe 2 weddings and some little things, you know, sometimes I would do single arrangements, and then people would say, well, this is amazing. We've never seen anything like this before. And I thought, this is how I want to be known, for somebody who is not just, you're not looking just for flowers. You're looking for art in flowers. You're looking for floral art. So if you're looking for floral art, and that's not everybody, that's maybe 1% of the industry, then you can look for me. And I was okay with that, because I don't need to have 50 weddings a year. I don't want that. I want to have 5 weddings a year, but have something really amazing. So within a matter of a few years of not having that much business, I slowly started getting inquiries for work that I was proud of, to put my name on. And I think that's what helped me get where I am today, was that I was okay to say no, because you have to be okay to say no. And I understand that a lot of times people can't say no because they need to pay their bills. But if there's ever a way that you can say no and get away with it, you should do that, because you should expect that you are better than just to put some flowers that you're barely getting paid for on the table for someone's wedding. And I mean, in the last 9 years, I've been able to bring this business that's really from nowhere, from just a mom, stay-at-home mom who wanted a change of life and an outlet, to a business that is now international. And it has, you know, I do destination weddings and I do the kind of work that I really love. But it's not without hard work and without the commitment to be able to know who you want to be and what you want out of this career.
Yeah, and I think that's incredible, and I think that takes a lot of courage to say no.
Thank you. Yeah, it does. Yes, it does.
It really does, and I think that I think when you say you decided that you wanted to only accept budgets where there was a $10,000 flower budget.
Right.
A lot of people are probably thinking, you know, I'd love to have more of those kinds of events.
Right.
So do you feel like in trying to market for that, do you feel like was it what you put out on social media? Did you, you know, have a PR firm? Did you, you know, I'm trying to think, how do you get to that level?
I think
because
my
that's
greatest
important.
PR was my social media, because I remember thinking when I first started the business, I thought, well, how am I going to get myself out there? Like what?
Right.
I don't have the kind of money that I can pay. For example, at the time, Martha Stewart magazine was a big deal.
Right.
I don't have the money to pay Martha Stewart to talk about me. And even if I did pay for an advertisement like that, it wouldn't be the same as Martha Stewart magazine wanting to talk about me, because it wouldn't be the same as a feature. So that would be my money wasted. What I decided that I was going to do was to build this and to do it all on my own. And that meant that it was a really hard task, because a lot of times you're faced with people who don't want to help you. I mean, my experience with this industry initially was a very negative one. People don't care about helping you, because that only means that they're going to, in their opinion, that you're going to step on them and you're going to take their space. They don't understand that this is a huge, huge, huge pizza or a pie, and everyone can eat from it. And so automatically, maybe it was my personality, because I'm a stronger person, I'm a direct person. It was they were intimidated. They didn't like what I looked like on social media. I still get those kind of people who judge me based on the kind of inference they take on social media, on my Instagram, and then they decide they don't like me. I'm not a nice person. And they've never ever met me in their whole life or even talked to me. So I was dealing with a lot of that, because I think a strong person who has direction and who knows what they want oftentimes comes across as somebody who's intimidating. And I think I am that person who is intimidating to many people. So I was having that to fight with. And the bottom line is that I told myself that I'm just not gonna, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to put color out there. I'm going to bring people eyeballs into this little space of mine. And I quickly realized that if I put up pictures that were a little bit risky, you know, that it wasn't always the same colors, beige tones and whites and
Right.
whatever, safe colors, that people actually wanted to see it. And when I started taking photos of those things, I realized, well, gee, I really like these colors. Like I like that I'm putting a blue in the middle of the reds and the, you know, I don't know, purples and whatnot. And so it draws the attention. And I thought, well, I'm going to use this. This is my key to my success. This is my power. I like to play with color. So why don't I take that to the next level and play with color and show that not every wedding needs to be white or light pink. While that's still beautiful, you can do different things, because you should be able to be a trendsetter, and you should say, well, here, let's do this a little bit different and let's see where that takes us. And I think that it was that which allowed me to be seen on my own and build this audience, which then became my personal PR. Because again, PR agencies don't work for you like you would do for yourself. Nobody advocates for you like you would do for yourself.
Right. And plus, a lot of times I find that some of these companies, they don't really know our industry.
No.
And so it's kind of like what they do sometimes feels very shallow almost.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you would say that, because I, over the last few months of being at home, I've been getting a lot of these PR agencies approaching me who are working for some brand. And of course, they go after people who have followers on Instagram, and they want to collaborate with me for this brand. And they have absolutely no idea, like, what I am, who I am. They just look at a number on Instagram and whether this is even a good fit for their client, you know. So you want me to advertise or whatever, collaborate with you for some kind of a skincare, but my followers don't care about skincare. They're there to see flowers. They're there to see wedding, not skincare. So it's very interesting that it is very shallow.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, and I'm not trying to be mean about it, but it's just kind of innocence. I don't know. It was funny. I got an email or an instant message from someone who wanted to be on our podcast, which we get from time to time, obviously.
Sure.
But the person, you know, is about hair design, you know, doing hair. I'm like,
yeah.
Do you know?
what would you say?
Even though maybe they saw my picture and they know I need help with my hair. I don't know, but all I know
But it's called the Flower Podcast, not the Hairstyle Podcast. I just don't understand that.
I don't get it. But that's the disconnect that we have to deal with. But it's all good. I'm glad you mentioned color, because one thing I see in your work time and time again is your use of color. And I think back, and I don't remember exactly when, because it's all a blur for me, but I know it was last year, maybe I saw the images. It was Lake Como, I think. Yes. And it was, I mean, this ombre of color and all these, and I'm like, yes, finally someone is out there producing weddings with color. And some of that I think might be cultural, like certain, you know, depending what part of the world you're from, you may embrace more color in a wedding and not be so conservative, but it's just so great to see it. Do you find people come to you for that, or do you?
For sure. I think people do come to me for that. Although I have to say that about half of my weddings are neutral colors, because people just naturally, they want that. They want the classic, safe, situation. And even with that type of clientele, I'm still trying to make it more interesting. I'm trying to use textures, different shades of this, that, neutral color and this and that. But I do feel that people do want, ever since we've been putting out these, in the last 2 years, I've been putting out more colorful weddings, and people do come to me and say, we want that. We love what that looked like. Let's do more of it. Or even planners, and the planners that I work with very closely in Como, she really wanted to have color incorporated in all of her weddings, because that actually gave her better imagery. It gave her more attention. It gives us more attention in social media. People are more drawn to it when it's a very simple thing. You put up an arrangement of a pink, a picture of a pink arrangement, and lots of likes, lots of interaction. And then you put up an arrangement that's white, and it's half the amount of interest from people, because it's just not as interesting to them.
Well, I don't think it stands out.
It doesn't stand out.
If you're scrolling through your feed and you see the same thing, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what is all this color? And it's a wedding, and you're like, wow, I wish I had weddings like that, because it's just more interesting. And so, yeah.
It's more interesting. And again, it's more beautiful to photograph, I think. It's more memorable. People remember it. And it's more fun, quite frankly. Isn't it nice to have a season that you can say you've worked with all these different colors, versus a season where you just work with white and light pink the whole, for the I don't know, 5 months that you were working. And so for me, it's, of course, again, we have the white classic weddings too, but in general, if I can, sometimes they even come to me and say, well, I want to have a beige, I want it all to be beige toned. And then they'll come to me after I've done another wedding before them, and they say, you know what, I saw what you did for that wedding. I think I'm changing my mind. I want to have color now. I want to have color introduced. Or when I'm doing a design meeting, for example, like a mock-up, I'll bring the colors, say it's again like a beige, classic color wedding, and I'll bring my beiges and I'll create a lovely arrangement with those colors. And then I'll have some darker like peaches and corals, and I'll say, well, here's what you asked for. Now I'm going to add a few colors to this, and you tell me which one you like better. And 85% of the time, they like the one that I recommend, the colors and the additions that I bring into it. So I think that it's also that people are afraid. Again, back to the whole fear factor. People are afraid to step outside of their comfort zone. And so if you can show them that it's okay to do that, then they're more willing.
Yeah. And sometimes it's all they see. If they're looking they look at magazines, they look on Pinterest boards, maybe they're meeting with a wedding designer, a planner, and again, that's most of what they see. And they kind of, in a way, they do fall in love with it, or they do like it. But they don't know. It's like, this pond is really gigantic. It's not this little tiny pond of color that we're used to seeing. So,
that is very true. And you're absolutely right that is all they see. So how can they possibly want anything else when they haven't been given the option of something else?
I've had a couple experiences, not like what you exactly like you described, but where I would be selling flowers to a client, and because I came from the wholesale end of it, and so and they pull this palette out, and then I pull a few things out and add to it, and they're like, oh my gosh, what a difference that makes. And bridging colors or pulling other colors out of the flowers that are already there, or things. And I love that. I love the fact that you had these flowers kind of off to the side, and you go to add them in, and then it's kind of like, not only do they love what you've done, but now they trust you more, because they say, oh wow, okay, she gets it, she gets me. I love this it makes them feel special, because now it's all of a sudden they're getting something they couldn't get anywhere
Nobody
else
probably
does.
And it's interesting that you should say that, because honestly, when I meet my clients, I always tell them, whatever they get, I create something new for everyone. I don't want to replicate something I've done before, or something that somebody else did before. It is a unique experience for every couple. And I want them to know that, because that only, well, it'll make it more beautiful, in my opinion, and unique, but also makes it more interesting for me to work on as a designer, where I don't have to repeat the same thing, because it's boring. It's boring if you're doing the same thing every time. But every client, to me, is an opportunity for something new, and for me to just sort of step outside of what I have done before and challenge myself a little bit, and be innovative.
And it also helps you not get burned out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's very true.
And the other thing I love about that is you're describing that in my own mind. I'm thinking, what a special day when the bride and groom or families come to that venue, come to that site, and they see what you've created, especially for them.
Yeah.
And it is different. It is unique. It is special, whether it's details, flowers, colors, what have you. And it's kind of like, wow. I mean, there's just this huge wow factor that comes with it.
Exactly. And that is probably one of my most favorite parts of my job, is when I see clients sort of, lay their eyes upon this space that we created for the first time with flowers, and they're wowed by it. And it's probably the best part of my job.
Yeah, I bet it is. I can imagine. And that's just cool. Well, I think, when people are, designers and other people are trying to do those things, and to hear that you try to make them different, like you challenge yourself.
Right.
And when you see the flowers you work with, and the sophistication of many of them, and the colors, the way you use them, that at some point it's got to be hard. It's like, how do I make this new and interesting?
It is hard, and it's expensive, because as you know, it's an expensive endeavor to try to, to pay for flowers that not everybody else does. And, we have a lot of beauty available to us throughout the year. And while I love drawing from nature and from the seasons, and really just, I do like to build upon the colors of the season, what's available. But I don't worry about, how many stems I'm going to buy. Yes, I mean, obviously depends on how many guests there are, how big is the wedding is. But in general, I try not to limit myself to just 4 types of flowers and some foliage, because then it's going to be like everybody else's wedding. And so you have to be willing to do your research, be willing to take chances, and just kind of be, willing to spend a little bit more money out of your profit.
Yeah, and you can plan for that. I mean, that's something you can plan. So let me, and this, I hope you're comfortable with this. I'm thinking, you don't do recipes, I kind of feel like. Okay. So then you have a budget that you spend on flowers, and you spend that budget.
Right.
And so when you go to mark up things, is that part of your design fee, is where your profit really is, and the flowers are separate? Or do you mark up your flowers?
So it's all one thing. So it does not, like, for example, we charge by the table. Like, here's the table, here's how much a runner costs. It doesn't matter if I'm putting more flowers in this or less. I just go based upon what that wedding is. I could be buying, and it all evens out, with the rest throughout the year, the season, because, maybe I'm charging the same price for this table runner as I am for the other one, but one has maybe 4 more flowers in it than, 4 more kinds of flowers, variety of flowers than the other. Neither of them are going to be, I'm not going to have less of anything in either one, but maybe I'm taking less profit from one than I did, the other. Okay. So, but I don't care, because it depends, maybe in autumn, I find myself with many more ingredients than I do, for example, in winter. But I'm not going to be held back by, well, I've only, I've allocated this much for this table runner, and I'm not going to go a penny, above that. I think that's, to me, it's like, then I'm not going to be creative. Then I won't be allowing myself the creativity and the freedom. And I also find that when I have more flowers available, my freelancers, more colors, more variety, more textures, my freelancers are in heaven. And therefore the
Oh
product,
yeah.
it really, the product that comes out, the result is beautiful because they are so inspired by what they're working with. And so they're going to be their best selves as well, versus working with the same 4 ingredients for 3-day weddings where you're just using the same colors,
Right.
same rose, this and that. So, so yeah, we include design as well as flowers, all in one. It's all encompassed.
So freelancers, I mean, when I see the kind of work you do you have a hard time finding freelancers that can kind of,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because it's,
sure.
it's like some people are better at certain things than others, and it's not anything
Right,
against anybody, but,
right.
to create the Tulipina look,
Yes. So my freelancers, I'm pretty picky about who my freelancers are, and they're all my students, my former students.
that's awesome. Free training. They
Like
pay for you to
Connor,
train them.
yeah, yeah. And you're right in that some of them have different strengths than the other, and that's perfectly fine because that's what I want. I don't want everyone to be the exact same as each other. And what I like to think, for me, I'm very involved in every wedding. So you're not going to see me, I don't know, like, I don't, I guess my business doesn't scale as well as some other florists who would be making walls and have recipes and things like that. Mine are much more pieces of art brought into events. And so I have to be much more involved simply because I can't, clone myself to go to different places. So in some ways that slows my growth, I guess, in that I can't take more than, X number of weddings per year because there's only so much I as one person can do. But in general, I like to have a finger in everything because that's my name is on it, and that's what's made me who I am. But there are some amazing members of my team who are absolutely wonderful, and they know what to do. They know my style. They are beautiful, creative people. And at the same time, I like to think about flower arrangements as Persian carpets. Persian carpets are never the same because they are works of art. They're handmade. And even if you might make the same exact design, they will never be the same. And that's how I think of my floral design and my teams, because they're all working with the same ingredients, and it's their interpretation of what those ingredients are, but they're all beautiful. And in the end, it's a beautiful harmony when it's put together in an event.
That sounds wonderful. I think you think of also the level of, I think of like a chef, for example,
Yeah.
and in a restaurant, and how their name is on every plate that goes out,
Yes.
and they're always checking everything and being involved with everything in a higher end restaurant, of course. And I think of that picture when I think of you, you have these incredible people that are designing, you trust, you've trained, and you're just making sure that, it's final. And I also think by not having all these other things like stem counts and all this other kind of stuff, it's like a level of stress that, is not being self-imposed. I mean, you don't need another stress. With doing destination weddings, what do you find is one of the biggest challenges that you've had?
Well, I think that every time you're working in an environment that you're not familiar with per se,
Sure.
It poses a challenge because now you're having to go find different resources in this new space that you don't know anything about. And so through the years, definitely, I mean, versus me having to be in my studio in my own country where I know exactly where to order flowers from, and where I can go to pick up a last minute this and that. But I think what we've done in general is, because I sort of built my career also based upon my international workshops. From very early on, when I wasn't doing weddings, I was doing workshops around the world. And that experience really opened up a new window where I was able to find my team members around the world and be able to find to source anything I needed in Asia, in Europe, which is the two main places, obviously. And in the United States, it feels like nothing because you're,
Right.
if I'm working in Texas, it's no big deal because I've already been, all over Europe trying to work and get my resources in order. And it becomes easier as you do it more, obviously. And so with Italy, it now feels like home because number one, I used to live there, but also now I have this relationship with Holland and with local farms. And so I can get it all together and it just, it's beautiful.
And the result is beautiful as well. And
Thank
so,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I know that I noticed on your website you've done some online courses in the past, and
yeah,
what have you been working on during our pandemic, our local COVID situation?
Yeah, I basically took this time that, like most of us have at home, and put together sort of this Tulipina wedding series. Basically, it is a window into, and it was a project that I wanted to do for actually a number of years, but I never had time. So it's just basically going through what a wedding production would look like if you were working with me. And I build things that I normally build for weddings with another one of my freelancers. And so we just basically created a table setting. We do like centerpieces, table settings, a table runner, and an installation, and of course bouquet. So that's the series that that we recorded. That's going to be coming out sometime in September.
Wow, that's going to be something I'm sure a lot of people will be thrilled about that.
I hope so.
And I know, I'm not sure when this episode's airing, so I'm hesitant to ask this, but I know soon you mentioned something about being down in Asheville.
Yes. So I've planned a workshop in Asheville, North Carolina, at a beautiful farm, Flourish Flower Farm. And, she has beautiful flowers towards the end of the summer. And I thought, why not? We'll just go. And I don't know, everybody needs a little getaway nowadays with what's been happening. And so we're just going to go and have a good time and learn and be with like-minded people and just immerse ourselves in beauty.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. Yeah, it really does. I feel like there's always, I always like to ask, sort of in this last segment, a question about advice, like advice that either someone's given you that really meant a lot, or advice you would like to pass on to other people in our community.
Well, I think my most famous advice, which I continue to come back to, is that you really should not let your fears dictate who you can be and how far you can go in life. I think that dreams are only going to remain dreams if you're afraid. So your greatest obstacle to success is yourself. And you're the one who'll stop yourself. And I think fear is what's behind that. And in my world, if I had been fearful, which I have been about many things, but if I had allowed that fear to stop me from making the leap, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I couldn't continue to go to places I want to go, where my career is concerned, if I allowed my fears to rule me.
That's really powerful. I know that that's something that I think, especially this season, everyone has, wondering what's going on with their businesses and postponing and things. There's a lot of fear that has to be worked through.
And uncertainty, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious, if you mind, what is something more personal, perhaps, that's a specific that maybe that you had to overcome fear-wise? Because I feel like sometimes people, they're like, yeah, she's, talking about producing a destination wedding is one set of fears, but
Yeah.
just starting my business is another set of fears.
Okay, I have a good one for you.
Good.
Let's see. I started my business in 2011, and in that year, I had a friend who was getting married in Ohika Castle, and in the, you know where that is?
Now go.
Yeah, Ohika Castle is in Long Island,
Okay.
and I literally had never done a wedding before, and she had this wedding. This is a huge, huge castle in Long Island. I mean, I now live in New York, and I dread going to Long Island because it takes forever to get there. But I was living in San Francisco at the time, and she asked me if I would do the flowers for her wedding. And initially I thought, oh my gosh, how could I ever pull this off? I cannot do this. I don't know anything about how this world works. But I decided that I went back and forth a lot, actually. And then finally I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. If I can do this, maybe I can do so much more after I've accomplished this task. And so I set out to do the flowers for this wedding that was close to 200 people.
Wow.
In this huge castle. And it was, and not knowing what really entailed to do a wedding in, gosh, it was so hot. It was like, I don't know, 90-degree weather, 90-degree humid in the middle of July, summer
Wow.
weather. And, from just renting a refrigerated truck to driving it across, to not having hired the right number of help, which was essentially nothing because it was me. I made 75 arrangements in the back of a refrigerated truck for 3 days. I lived in the truck. I had to learn how to order flowers. I had to understand what quantity I needed, how many, vessels I needed. There were last minute additions. I mean, it was insane. And I did this by myself with the help of my husband, my sister who came to help, but she was no designer. And I did it. And I wouldn't say that it's my most beautiful wedding, but it was beautiful. She was very happy. Everybody who attended thought it was amazing and it was different. And I was dead at the end of the 3 days because, I was a guest and I'm not a maid of honor. I was a bridesmaid, which I was literally like, I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to just sleep in my hotel room. But after having done that, within my first year of business, I realized, I learned so much, first of all, about what it takes to do a wedding, but also just to be able to say, I have done it. It was great.
That's amazing. Yeah. And what's crazy is that's so scary going through that at every single step of that.
Oh my gosh. 75 arrangements. What the heck was I thinking? My gosh. It's just, oh my goodness. I can't imagine doing even 30 arrangements today for a wedding by myself, let alone 75.
Yeah, with everything else that had to be done too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Because there were there were the boutonnieres and there were the bouquets and oh my goodness, there was like the cocktail arrangements, you name it. There was installation. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, crazy,
yes.
crazy. Now, I know when we first started this, I had the chance to wave and meet Nate, your husband, which is great. And I think, does he come on board? Does he work for Tulipina now?
So yeah, I have to tell you that my husband, at the time when I started this business, he was in tech. He was in technology. Great job. He was a VP at a high tech company in San Francisco. He'd been doing it for years, actually. And about 4 years ago, he quit his job to help me with Tulipina full time. Even from the beginning, he was always helping
Sure.
me with, the everything, but also just more on the business side of things, because I'm a creative person. I don't want to worry about proposals. I don't want to worry. I want to just create beautiful things. And so to have him to be my business side has been such a blessing. And so he quit his job to help me with this business full time. And today, Tulipina, this little hobby of mine that started in my home, has become our way to live.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
So, how is that? How is that working with your husband? How is that being like?
I love it. I have to tell you, I love Nate so much. He might not say the same thing about me, as far as like he's being, not having no problem working with me all the time. But for me, I don't get sick of Nate, and so it's he's just he's my backbone, and he's such a wonderful human being, and to be around him has been such a support. And so I love it. We literally work all day together here in the garden, now that we are not doing weddings this year. And then we're back inside, we're having a glass of wine together and just kind of chilling. So it's thankfully been one of the greatest experiences to be able to work together and grow this business
Sure.
as the husband and wife.
Did I just see you guys recently had an anniversary?
Yeah, we've been married for 20 years.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
well, this has been such a pleasure and such a treat. And
Thank
thank
you,
you
Scott.
so much for
Thank you.
hanging out with me for an hour
My
and
pleasure.
getting to learn a lot about the world of Tulipina. I guess one question I didn't ask, I should ask, is where did the name Tulipina come from?
Yes, it's a funny thing. So as an undergrad and a graduate student, I lived in Italy, and I was a student there for about total of 2 years, and just always a love affair. I've always loved Italy so much because I think it reminds me of my own culture, and I have freedom there. So those are the two things the one thing I don't have in my own country is freedom as a woman.
Right.
But so I speak Italian, and I remember thinking, and there was this movie that I had seen as a student learning Italian, Bread and Tulip, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to name my business, Tulip in Italian, and it was taken. That domain name, that name was taken, and I thought, well, I'm just going to make up my own little name. And literally, the word tulip in Italian is masculine. So what I did was just change it to, I did a little whatever switcheroo, and I changed it to this little feminine tulip, and that's where Tulipina came from.
Well, it's such a sweet name.
Thank you.
So thank you again for being on the Flower Podcast.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.